The night was cold and the road was empty. Jake drove his old red truck down a forgotten highway, somewhere between nowhere and nothing. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the soft crackle of the radio. The world outside was dark and lonely, the kind of night when strange things happen and no one ever knows. Jake was tired. He had been driving for hours trying to keep his eyes open. He just wanted to reach the next town and find a cheap motel, but when he passed an old gas station, he saw something that made him press the brakes hard. There was movement, just a small shadow under the broken lights of the gas station sign. At first he thought it was a stray dog, or maybe a person waiting for help, but as the headlights swept across the lot he froze. A small figure stood there tied to a wooden post near the pumps. The wind blew dust around her feet. Jake's heart started to pound. He slowly pulled the truck to the side and stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. The gas station looked dead. The windows were broken. The sign above the pumps flickered, open, then closed, then nothing. The smell of old oil and rain filled the air. Jake felt uneasy, but curiosity pushed him forward. He turned on his flashlight and aimed it toward the figure. What he saw made his breath catch. It was a girl, but not like any girl he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like silver under the light. Her hair was white, glowing faintly as if it caught the moonlight inside it. Her eyes, they weren't normal eyes. They were deep blue, glowing softly, almost like two small lights in the dark. She was tied with an old rope around her wrists and ankles. She looked weak, trembling, her head hanging low. Around her neck, a dirty piece of cardboard hung by a string. The words were written in rough black letters. "Take her for a bottle of liquor." Jake stared, his stomach twisting. What kind of sick joke was this? He looked around quickly, half expecting someone to jump out from behind the building. But there was no one. Just the sound of the wind, the creaking of the old sign, and the faint breathing of the girl. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. The girl lifted her head slowly. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out wasn't English. It was soft, musical, like a whisper from a dream. Jake couldn't understand a word. He took a step closer, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "Just tell me who did this." No answer. Only a faint whimper. Then he noticed something else, marks on her arms, small burns and bruises. Whoever tied her there had not been kind. Anger burned inside him. He reached down and began to untie the rope. The girl tried to pull back at first, frightened, but she was too weak. When the last knot came loose, she fell forward into his arms. She was cold, almost freezing to the touch. "It's okay," Jake said softly, holding her steady. "You're safe now." He looked back at his truck. He didn't know what he was doing or why. Maybe it was because he had a daughter once, a daughter he hadn't seen in years. Or maybe it was just because no one deserved to be left like this. He picked her up gently and carried her to the truck. Her head rested on his shoulder, and for a moment he thought he heard her whisper something again, something that made the air vibrate slightly. It was like a hum deep in his chest. Jake laid her on the passenger seat and wrapped his old jacket around her. "You'll be all right," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "We'll get you warm." Before driving away, he glanced back at the post where she had been tied. The sign swayed in the wind, creaking softly. "Take her for a bottle of liquor." The words made his skin crawl. He tore it down, threw it on the ground, and kicked it away. Then he got back in the truck and started the engine. As the tires rolled down the road, Jake kept glancing at her. She was breathing slowly, her silver skin glinting faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were closed now, but every few minutes her fingers twitched, like she was dreaming. Jake felt something strange then, not fear, not even confusion, but a deep uneasy feeling that his life had just changed. He didn't know who she was or what she was, but he knew one thing for sure. Whoever left her there would come looking, and when they did, things would never be the same again. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The first drops of rain hit the windshield. Jake tightened his grip on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the empty road ahead, unaware that the real journey had only just begun. The rain fell harder as Jake drove down the lonely road, his old truck shaking every time the wind hit its sides. The wipers scraped back and forth, barely keeping the glass clear. The silver-skinned girl sat beside him, wrapped in his jacket, silent and still. Every few minutes she shivered, whispering something in that strange musical language. Jake didn't understand her words, but they made his chest feel tight. It was like listening to something beautiful and sad at the same time. He turned down the radio, his thoughts heavy. What was she? Where did she come from? And most of all, what kind of people would leave her tied to a post like that? He wanted to believe she was just a lost person, maybe a runaway from some science fair gone wrong. But deep down he knew better. No human had eyes like that. After an hour, he stopped at a gas station that was still open. The bright lights made the wet pavement shine. He looked at the girl. Her skin reflected the light softly, like moonlight trapped under glass. "Stay here," he said gently. "I'll be right back." She didn't move or speak, just stared ahead with those glowing blue eyes. Jake stepped out, his boots splashing in puddles. Inside, the old man behind the counter barely looked up. Jake grabbed a bottle of water, a sandwich, and a blanket. As he placed the items on the counter, the clerk squinted at him. "You out here alone?" the man asked. Jake hesitated. "Yeah, just driving through." The clerk grunted, scanning the items. "Storm's gonna get worse. Ain't safe on these roads tonight." Jake nodded, paid, and hurried back to the truck. When he opened the door, his breath caught. The girl was looking at him now, directly at him. Her eyes were brighter than before, glowing like soft blue fire. She spoke again, slow and careful. "You are kind?" Jake froze. You can talk?" She tilted her head, struggling for words. "Kind, you? Help." Her voice was soft, almost fragile, but her tone was full of something Jake hadn't heard in a long time. Trust. He smiled a little, trying to hide his shock. "Yeah, I'm helping. You're safe now." She seemed to relax slightly and looked down at her hands. The rope marks on her wrists were fading, glowing faintly as if healing from the inside. Jake stared amazed. "Who did this to you?" he asked. "The people who tied you up?" She didn't answer. Her lips moved, but only one word came out. "Trade." Jake frowned. "Trade?" She pointed at her neck where the cardboard sign had hung, then looked away. A cold feeling went through him. Someone had wanted to trade her like she was a thing, not a person. The words on that sign made more sense now, and that made it worse. He started the truck again and drove on in silence. The road stretched endlessly through the rain. He wanted to take her to the police, but a strange instinct stopped him. He couldn't explain it, but he knew if he handed her over, she would disappear, and not in a good way. She didn't belong in a police station or a hospital. Whatever she was, people would experiment on her. They would lock her up, study her, maybe worse. No, Jake wasn't going to let that happen. He made a choice then, simple but final. He would take her home. After 2 more hours of driving, he reached the edge of the forest where his small cabin stood. It was a quiet place far from town where he lived alone after his divorce. He had chosen it for peace, but tonight, peace felt far away. He parked the truck and carried her inside. The warmth of the fireplace flickered across the room, making her skin shine like polished silver. She looked around slowly, her eyes wide with wonder. "Home?" she whispered. Jake nodded. "Yeah, my home. You can stay here tonight." She looked at the fire, then at him. "Thank you." Jake felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was fear. He gave her the blanket and some water. She touched the glass carefully, like she'd never seen one before. When she drank, the lights in the room flickered slightly. Jake stared at the ceiling, his heart beating fast. Outside, the rain slowed. The forest was silent, but somewhere in the distance a strange humming sound echoed faintly through the night, low and metallic, almost like the growl of a machine searching through the dark. Jake didn't notice it yet. He was too busy watching the girl, wondering who she really was. But deep in the woods, headlights flashed between the trees. Someone or something was looking for her, and they were getting closer. The night was quiet, too quiet. The rain had stopped, but the wind still whispered through the trees around Jake's small cabin. Inside, the fire burned low, painting the wooden walls in soft orange light. Jake sat in his old chair, watching the girl as she slept on the couch. She looked peaceful now, her face calm, her silver skin glowing faintly like moonlight. The blanket covered her shoulders, and her white hair shimmered each time the fire cracked. He should have been asleep hours ago, but his mind refused to rest. Who was she? What kind of person or creature looked like that? He thought about taking her to town in the morning, maybe to a hospital. But a voice in his head told him not to. Something about her didn't belong in that world. He sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. "You're losing it, Jake," he muttered to himself. "First a glowing girl, now you're talking to the walls." He leaned back, letting the fire's warmth sink into his bones. But just as his eyes began to close, the radio on the shelf behind him crackled. He frowned. The old radio hadn't worked in years. He stood up slowly, staring at it as static hissed through the air. The girl didn't move. Then through the noise, a soft voice spoke. "Thank you for not trading me." Jake froze. His skin prickled. The voice was hers, clear, soft, and close, even though her lips hadn't moved. He turned toward the couch. The girl was still lying there, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady. The radio crackled again, and the same voice whispered, "You are kind." Jake's heart thudded in his chest. He stepped closer, his boots creaking on the old floorboards. "Lyra," he whispered, though he didn't know why that name came to his mind. The girl's eyes opened slowly, bright blue, glowing even in the dim light. She sat up, the blanket slipping off her shoulders. "You dream loud," she said softly. Her words were broken but clear enough to understand. Jake blinked, confused. "Dream loud? What does that mean?" She tilted her head as if searching for words. "Your mind makes sound. I hear it. You can hear my thoughts?" he asked, his voice low and full of disbelief. She nodded slowly. "All humans loud. So many fears." Jake took a small step back. He didn't know whether to be afraid or amazed. The fire popped, making both of them flinch slightly. "Is that how you spoke through the radio?" he asked. She looked toward it. "Old metal. Still remembers voices. Easy to speak." Jake rubbed his forehead. "Easy for you, maybe. You're not exactly from around here, are you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "No, I am not from here." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft crackle of fire and the slow ticking of the clock. Jake finally sat down on the edge of the table. "You got a name?" The girl blinked, then said softly, "Lyra." He smiled faintly. "Lyra, huh? That's pretty." She studied him for a moment, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. "You have sadness." Jake looked down, his throat tight. "Yeah, I guess I do." He hadn't told anyone about his daughter in years, about the accident that took her away. But somehow Lyra's words made it impossible to hide. She didn't ask more. Instead, she reached out her hand slowly, touching his arm. Her skin was warm now, soft, and the faint blue light under her fingertips pulsed once, like a heartbeat. For a moment, the pain inside him felt lighter, like a heavy weight had lifted off his chest. Jake blinked. "What was that?" Lyra lowered her hand. "You carry too much. I take small part. You took my pain." He asked, stunned. "Just little," she said. "Too much I fall?" Jake didn't know what to say. He looked at her with a strange mix of awe and fear. Whoever she wasn't dangerous, not to him. But the thought of people wanting to trade her, hurt her, or capture her made his stomach twist. "Lyra," he said quietly, "the men who tied you up, will they come back?" Her expression darkened. She looked toward the window, where the night pressed against the glass. "Yes," she whispered. "They will come. They always come." Jake's grip on the table tightened. He glanced toward his shotgun hanging on the wall. "I'll be ready," he said. Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "You are kind, but they are not human." The words hit him like cold water. "Not human? What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the radio crackled again. This time it wasn't her voice. It was something else, deep, metallic, and full of static. "Target lost. Scanning Sector 3. Lyra's face went pale, her blue glow dimming. "They found the signal," she whispered. "They are close." Jake rushed to the window, peering into the dark forest. In the distance, faint red lights flickered between the trees like eyes searching in the night. The silence broke with the low hum of engines hidden behind the wind. Jake turned back to her. "Who are they?" Lyra's voice shook. "Hunters?" The forest outside was no longer quiet. Somewhere in the distance, engines hummed low and steady, like metal breathing in the dark. The faint red lights flickered between the trees, slowly moving closer to Jake's cabin. Inside, the air felt heavy. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, throwing long shadows across the room. Jake stood near the window, shotgun in hand, staring out into the night. His jaw was tight, but his hands trembled slightly. Behind him, Lyra sat on the couch, hugging the blanket close. Her glowing blue eyes flickered faintly, weaker than before. She looked scared, smaller than she had the night before. Lyra, Jake said quietly, still watching the woods. You said they're not human. What are they? She didn't answer at first. Her eyes followed the tiny sparks rising from the fire. Finally, she whispered, Hunters. They take what is not theirs. Jake turned to her. Hunters of what? Of you? Lyra nodded slowly. Of all like me. He walked closer, lowering the gun. You mean, there are more of you? Her gaze lifted to meet his. There were. Long ago, Jake's stomach twisted. What happened? Lyra closed her eyes. Her voice trembled as she spoke. My people came to this world many seasons ago. Not to fight, to learn. We watched from the skies, hidden, waiting. But when our ship was seen, your kind attacked. Jake swallowed hard. You mean, humans shot you down? She nodded. Fear makes humans dangerous. You do not understand what you destroy. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. That sounds about right. Lyra continued, her voice soft and distant, like she was remembering something painful. My ship broke apart in the clouds. I fell in the water. The hunters found me before I could call for help. Jake frowned. Hunters? You mean the ones out there? Lyra's eyes glowed brighter for a moment. They wear human skin now. Machines inside, voices not their own. They hunt for trade, parts, energy, life. Jake stepped back, his chest tightening. Machines in human bodies? You're saying they're some kind of cyborgs? She tilted her head, not understanding the word. They were made by your kind. Once soldiers. Now empty. Jake stared at the floor. None of this made sense, but something in her voice, something honest and scared, made him believe her. So they want you, he said. Why? What do they want with you? Lyra looked at her hands. The faint blue light under her skin shimmered gently. My heart, she whispered. It is not like yours. It holds power. They can use it to live forever. Jake's stomach dropped. That's why they tied you up. To sell you? Yes, she said. They wanted trade. I heard their minds. They laughed when I cried. For a long moment, Jake couldn't speak. The thought of anyone treating her like that, something alive and gentle, not even from this world, made his blood boil. He knelt down beside her. You're safe here. I won't let them take you. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shining again. You are kind, she whispered. But they will come. They always come, Jake forced a smile. Then let them come. I've got a few surprises waiting. She tilted her head, confused. Shotgun, he said simply, patting the weapon. For the first time, she smiled, a small, almost human smile that made her look less alien, more alive. The sound outside grew louder. The red lights moved between the trees like fireflies made of metal. Jake quickly turned off the lamps, leaving only the dying fire. Shadows swallowed the room. He peeked through the curtain. Figures moved through the mist, tall, slow, and mechanical. Their steps were too even, too heavy. Lyra's voice came soft behind him. They can smell my light. Then hide it, he whispered. She closed her eyes. The glow under her skin dimmed until she looked almost human. Her silver tone faded into a pale gray. The lights outside stopped moving. Jake held his breath. He could hear the faint clicking of metal feet on the wet earth. Then a voice called out, cold and robotic. Unit 07 confirms trace signal. Entry permitted. Jake stepped back from the window, heart pounding. Lyra grabbed his hand suddenly. Her skin was warm again. If they enter, we both die, she said quietly. Then we don't let them in, Jake replied. Her glowing eyes flicked open, filled with fear and something deeper. Trust. You do not understand, Jake. They will not knock, and she was right. A second later, the door shook violently. The old wood groaned under the impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jake raised the shotgun, aiming at the door. Stay behind me, he said. Lyra stood, her blanket falling to the floor. Her eyes began to glow again, brighter this time. The air around her shimmered like heat from fire. Lyra, Jake shouted, but before he could say more, she lifted her hand. The fire in the fireplace flared high, blue and white, throwing blinding light across the room. Outside, the red lights vanished. The forest went silent. Then, just as suddenly, everything went dark. The night exploded with light. For a second, everything outside Jake's cabin glowed white-blue. The trees, the wet ground, even the air itself seemed to hum with energy. Then silence. Jake stood frozen, one hand gripping the shotgun, the other shielding his eyes. When the light faded, the world looked different. The air shimmered, and the forest seemed to breathe. He turned toward Lyra. She stood in the center of the room, glowing brighter than ever. The blue light from her body painted the walls and ceiling like ripples under water. Her hair floated slightly, as if the gravity in the room had forgotten her. "What did you do?" Jake whispered. Her voice came soft, almost sad. "I hid us." For a moment, Jake looked out the window. The red lights had vanished. The forest looked empty again, but the air buzzed, thick, alive, dangerous. Lyra dropped to her knees suddenly, breathing hard. The glow around her flickered. Jake rushed to her side. "Hey, easy now." "What's happening?" She pressed a hand to her chest. "Too much energy. I can't hold long." He helped her sit back on the couch. "You saved us," he said. "You bought us time." Lyra's eyes met his. "No, I made them angry." As if to prove her right, a distant roar echoed through the woods, low and mechanical like the sound of a giant machine waking up. The windows rattled. Jake's blood ran cold. He ran to the window again. Through the trees, faint shapes moved. Dark, tall, wrong. They didn't walk like humans. They glided, their limbs too long, their eyes burning red. Lyra whispered, "Hunters." Jake loaded the shotgun, hands shaking. "Let them come." Lyra's expression was calm, almost resigned. "You cannot kill them with bullets." Jake gave a short laugh. "Maybe not, but I can slow them down." He turned off the last lantern, plunging the cabin into near darkness. Only the faint glow from Lyra's body remained. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of crunching leaves and snapping twigs. "They were close. Listen," Jake whispered. "When they come in, you stay low." "You hear me? You run if you get the chance." Lyra shook her head slowly. "I don't run anymore." Jake wanted to argue, but it was too late. The first window shattered, glass exploding inward. A shadow burst through, landing on the wooden floor with a metallic thud. Jake fired. The shotgun roared, the blast echoing through the cabin. The figure stumbled but didn't fall. The light from Lyra's glow revealed it. A man-shaped thing made of metal and skin, its face blank and smooth, eyes glowing red beneath a cracked surface. Jake pumped the shotgun again, firing once more. This time the creature fell, sparks flying from its chest. But even as it dropped, another one crashed through the front door, knocking it off its hinges. Lyra stood now, the blue light in her body pulsing faster, stronger. Jake turned to yell at her, but she raised her hand and the air itself seemed to freeze. The new creature stopped mid-step. Its limbs twitched. Its red eyes flickered like dying bulbs. Lyra's voice filled the room, calm but powerful. "You have no right to breathe my sky." The creature let out a metallic shriek and its body collapsed inward, folding like paper until nothing was left but dust and wires. Jake stared in shock. "What the hell?" Lyra's legs buckled. Jake caught her just before she hit the floor. "Hey, stay with me. Don't you dare fade on me now." Her eyes dimmed. "Too much power. Hurts." He set her gently against the wall. "You rest. I'll handle the rest." She shook her head weakly. "More coming." Outside, the hum grew louder again. 5, maybe 6 more red lights appeared between the trees. Jake's heart pounded. He looked around the cabin, the shelves, the old oil lamp, the gas cans near the door. An idea hit him. He grabbed one of the cans, splashing gas across the floorboards near the entrance. Then he tore a piece of cloth from an old curtain, dipped it, and lit it in the fire. The next hunter burst through the door just as Jake threw the flaming rag. The room exploded into orange light and smoke. The flames spread fast, racing along the floor. Jake covered Lyra with his coat, pulling her toward the back door. The hunter inside screeched, its body catching fire. Sparks burst from its chest as it thrashed against the walls. Jake kicked open the back door and dragged Lyra outside. Cold rain hit his face, hissing against the fire's heat. Behind them, the cabin burned like a beacon in the forest. Lyra opened her eyes weakly, the rain running down her silver skin. "You will die for me," she whispered. Jake shook his head, pulling her up. "Not tonight." In the distance, more lights moved through the trees. The hunters were regrouping. Jake looked at the burning cabin one last time. That place had been his quiet world, his safe place, but now it was gone. "Come on," he said, gripping her hand. "We've got to move." Lyra's faint smile flickered through the rain. You fight like my kind, she whispered. He glanced at her, confused but touched. Then maybe your kind had the right idea. As they disappeared into the forest, the fire roared behind them, and the sound of the hunters' engines filled the night. Somewhere above, the clouds pulsed with strange blue lightning, and for the first time, Jake wondered if the storm itself was watching. The forest was dark and wet, filled with the smell of smoke and rain. Jake pushed forward, holding Lyra's hand tightly as they stumbled over roots and fallen branches. Behind them, the burning cabin lit the night like a dying star. The orange glow flickered between the trees, and the sound of cracking wood echoed far and wide. Jake's lungs burned, his boots slipping on the muddy ground. He didn't dare look back. Every few seconds he thought he heard movement. Metal feet in the distance cutting through the rain. The hunters were still coming. Keep moving, he said, breathless. We're almost clear. Lyra's voice was faint. They will not stop. They never stop. Jake glanced at her. Her skin no longer shone bright blue. It was duller now, pale like soft moonlight. She was weak, struggling to keep up. He slowed down and helped her over a fallen log. Then we'll make them stop, he said. Lyra shook her head, her silver hair sticking to her face from the rain. You fight with heart, she whispered. But heart is not enough. Jake gave a small smile, though his voice was grim. Maybe not, but it's all I've got. They reached a clearing where the ground sloped down toward a river. The rain had made the water rise, rushing fast between the rocks. Jake scanned the area, no movement yet. The trees swayed, their shadows twisting in the dim lightning flashes above. He turned to Lyra. We'll follow the river. It'll cover our tracks. Lyra nodded weakly. Downstream, far safe ground there. Jake helped her down the slope, his arm around her shoulders. The cold water splashed up around their legs as they stepped into the shallows. The sound of the river swallowed their footsteps. For a while they moved silently. Jake's thoughts drifted back to everything that had happened. The gas station, the sign, the cabin. Just 2 nights ago he'd been alone, his life as empty as the road he drove. Now he was running through a storm with a glowing alien girl who had changed everything. He looked at her, tired, pale, but still walking beside him. She noticed and smiled faintly. You think loud again, she said softly. Jake chuckled. You can still hear that? She nodded. Your mind has too many questions. Yeah, he said. Like why me? Why did I find you? Lyra's blue eyes turned toward the sky. Maybe your heart called, she said simply. Jake didn't answer. He didn't believe in fate, but for the first time in years he wanted to. Thunder rolled overhead. The storm was moving fast, lightning flashing bright enough to paint the forest white for a moment. And in that flash, Jake saw something. A metallic shape through the trees ahead. Wait, he whispered, stopping. There, what is that? Lyra's eyes widened. My ship, they ran toward it. The small craft was half buried in the mud, one wing bent, the hull covered in moss and dirt. It looked like it had been there for days, maybe weeks. The silver metal was cracked and blackened from fire. Lyra stepped forward, her hands trembling as she touched the side of the ship. The faint blue light from her skin spread across the surface, tracing strange patterns along the hull. The ship answered with a low hum, deep and alive. It still listens, she whispered. She still remembers me. Jake looked around nervously. Can it fly? Not yet, Lyra said. But I can fix. I just need time. Jake nodded. Then you'll get it. He found an old tarp nearby and pulled it over part of the ship to hide the light. He gathered fallen branches, setting up a small shelter near the trees. The rain softened to a drizzle. Lyra knelt beside the ship, placing her hand on a small crystal embedded near its edge. Her body glowed brighter as the ship's lights flickered awake. Jake watched, amazed. You're charging it, aren't you? She nodded weakly. Energy, life, same thing. You're draining yourself, he said. You'll burn out. Her soft smile returned. Better to burn than fade. Jake knelt beside her. You don't have to do this alone. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. You do not fear me. Not once, he shook his head. You don't give me a reason to. She reached out and touched his chest lightly. Strange heart, she whispered. It beats with hope even when broken. Jake felt something inside him stir, something he thought he'd buried long ago. But before he could speak, a distant noise cut through the forest, a sharp mechanical hum. Jake turned toward the sound. Through the mist, red lights appeared again, moving in a line, closing in fast. They found us, he said. Lyra's glow flared brighter. "I can finish the ship," she said, "but I need one more spark." One more pulse. Jake's mind raced. He looked at the ship, then at the approaching lights. "Tell me what to do," she hesitated. "It must come from life. Strong, willing, human." Jake understood. "You mean me?" Lyra's eyes softened with sadness. "It may take too much," he smiled faintly. "You said it yourself, my heart's too loud. Maybe it's got enough to share." The red lights drew closer, cutting through the trees like lasers in fog. Lyra placed her glowing hands on the ship's core. "When I say now, you touch it. With your heart?" Jake nodded, his breath steady. The humming grew louder. The hunters were seconds away. "Now," Lyra shouted. Jake pressed his hand against the crystal. Pain shot through his body. White light burning, endless. His heart pounded once, twice. Then everything went silent. The ship roared to life. Lyra's scream mixed with the sound of thunder as a burst of blue energy exploded from the clearing, throwing the hunters back into the dark. When the light faded, Jake lay on the ground still. Lyra crawled to him, shaking, tears of light running down her face. "Jake," she whispered. His chest rose faintly. His heart still beat. Lyra smiled weakly. "You gave me sky again." Above them, the ship's engines hummed like the heartbeat of a world waking up. The forest was silent after the storm. The wind had died and the rain had faded into a soft mist that clung to the trees. Smoke drifted between the branches where the hunters had fallen, their broken metal bodies scattered like shadows. In the middle of the clearing, the alien ship stood alive again, its silver hull glowing faintly with blue veins of light. It looked like something born from the stars, breathing quietly in the heart of the forest. Jake lay on the wet ground beside it, his hand still resting against the crystal that had saved them both. His body was weak, every breath sharp and heavy. His skin was pale and his heart beat slow, like an old clock running out of time. Lyra knelt beside him, her glowing hands hovering over his chest. Her eyes were bright again, but not with power, with grief. "You gave too much," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You were not meant to give so much." Jake tried to smile, though it hurt. "Guess I've never been good at holding back." Lyra pressed her hand against his heart. The blue light in her skin flowed into him, small streams of warmth spreading through his chest. Jake felt his heartbeat grow steadier, though weak. "You're healing me again," he said softly. She shook her head. "Not healing. Borrowing time." He stared at her, confused. "Borrowing from who?" Lyra looked toward the ship, then back at him. "From me." Jake's breath caught. "No, don't do that." She smiled faintly. "You gave me sky. I give you tomorrow." Before he could argue, the ship's engine began to hum louder. The ground under them trembled. The blue glow around Lyra's body flickered like fire in the wind. Jake tried to sit up, but she pressed her hand gently to his shoulder. "Don't move," she said softly. "It's time." "Time for what?" "For me to go home." Jake's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her to stay, to hide, to live here. But when he looked into her glowing eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Peace. She was going home, not running away. Lyra helped him sit against a rock close enough to see the ship clearly. The metal panels opened slowly, releasing soft light that spilled into the clearing. Inside, the air shimmered like liquid glass. She turned to him. "You are strange for your kind," she said gently. "You see heart before fear." He smiled weakly. "You're not the first to call me strange." Lyra leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I will remember you, Jake. You sure you'll be okay?" He asked. She nodded. "My world waits for me, but your world still needs you." He reached for her hand, cold, glowing, light as air. "If you ever come back," she smiled, finishing his thought. "I will find you." Jake's chest ached. "You already did." Lyra stepped back slowly. The ship's light grew brighter, filling the clearing with a soft blue glow that turned night into dawn. She looked at him one last time. Her voice, soft as wind, echoed in his mind. "You gave me hope when I had none." Then she turned and walked into the ship. The door closed behind her with a soft hum. Jake shielded his eyes as the ship's engines came alive. The ground shook, leaves and ash swirling into the air. A beam of blue light rose upward, cutting through the clouds. The ship lifted silently higher and higher until it was just a bright star moving across the sky. Jake stood there long after it disappeared. The forest was quiet again, the only sound the river flowing nearby. He looked down at his hand, and something small and silver rested in his palm. A crystal, glowing faintly with the same blue light as Lyra's eyes. He didn't remember her giving it to him, but somehow he knew what it meant. He whispered to it, voice soft and shaky, "You made it home." The crystal pulsed once, glowing brighter and as if answering. Weeks passed. The story of the fire spread through the nearby towns. Some said lightning struck his cabin. Others said it was a gas explosion. Jake never explained. He rebuilt nothing. He stayed near the forest, quiet, living in a small trailer close to the river. Every night he sat outside and watched the sky. The crystal stayed on the table beside him, faintly glowing whenever the stars were out. One night, as the wind rustled the trees, the light from the crystal grew stronger, brighter than it had ever been. Jake stood and looked up, far above the horizon. A streak of blue light crossed the sky, moving fast, leaving a trail that sparkled before fading. Jake smiled, his heart steady, his eyes wet with quiet tears. "She remembered," he whispered. The crystal flickered again, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the night went still, and a soft hum lingered in the air, the same gentle sound he had first heard from her voice. Jake closed his eyes, smiling faintly. "Safe travels, Lyra." And somewhere beyond the stars, a voice whispered back, "Goodbye, kind heart." The forest returned to silence, but the light in Jake's trailer never went dark again.